Yes, guys, welcome back to the MMA Sucker podcast. As always, I'm Frazer Krohn, and we've got a few bits to talk about today. We've got Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder from Abu Dhabi to talk about. I'm trying out a new camera. I'm trying to record the podcast through my phone onto my laptop. It might work, it might not work. I'll see how it comes out. It's a little bit crisper for sure, but it's a bit of a nightmare to set up. We're going to talk about the co-main event, Petr Yan versus Marcus McGee. I thought that was a really fun fight. You'll see me looking over here quite a lot. That's where I've got my notes for today's podcast. And then we're going to look ahead to this weekend's upcoming UFC card because it's a strange one. We've got a new main event. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the sort of apex and whether we actually... I'll talk about it later. But starting off, Robert Whittaker versus Reinier de Ridder. Close fight, really tough fight to have to score for the judges, and a tough fight to probably referee as well. There was a lot of reminders of keeping busy and keeping going, and will I go back and watch it? Absolutely not. It's not an instant classic. It was a close fight. It was difficult to score. I had it 3-2 to Reinier de Ridder. Rounds 2, 4 and 5 all in favour of Reinier de Ridder. Round 1, good work from Bobby Knuckles. I thought he looked sharp on the jab. He was just a little bit quicker. He avoided the clinch. For the most part, he avoided the clinch and was able to defend takedowns in the middle. Exactly what I said he needed to do in the Keys to Victory piece that I did last week. Round 2, Reinier de Ridder was dominant. It's almost like I know what I'm talking about. As I said in my Keys to Victory piece, he needs to concentrate on position over submission, and that's what he did in round 2. He didn't rush things. He didn't get into, positions where Whittaker could kind of bounce back to his feet, and that really did pay dividends because he dominated the round. I thought it was a very, very easy round to score. Round 3 maybe could have been stopped. I mean, I can't remember who the referee was. I think was it Mark Goddard? I can double check that. But whoever the referee was gave Reinier de Ridder every opportunity to stay in that fight, and I'm here for it. That is exactly what we want to be seeing. Not to the levels that we saw in the Muhammad Yahya fight with Jason Herzog. It was Mark Goddard. Of course it was, because Mark Goddard's the gold standard in my opinion. But Whittaker scored a monumentally big knockdown in round 3, and I thought he was going to pick up his second finish victory in as many wins. He finished Ikram Alexeyrov, and then I thought he would finish Reinier de Ridder after a tough second round. But he was tired. He landed that big overhand right. He dropped de Ridder. He then followed de Ridder down, landed some huge shots, and de Ridder just did enough to stay in the fight, in my opinion. Clearly a Bobby Knuckles round. But this is where he began to look fatigued. And rounds 4 and round 5, very similar rounds. Dominated the position. De Ridder dominated the position in the clinch, not doing an awful lot of damage, but staying busy enough to not have the position separated. I thought it was a close fight, but I thought it was a fairly easy fight to score. I had it 3-2 de Ridder. Would I go back and watch it? Definitely not. But I think the stats skew this one ever so slightly. If you look at the stats for this fight, across 25 minutes, Robert Whittaker landed one less significant strike than Reinier de Ridder. However, Reinier de Ridder landed 192 total strikes and Robert Whittaker landed just 70. Now, what I find interesting about this is that I think it was either Bisping or Feld, I can't remember who it was, but someone definitely said it on the comms, that Reinier de Ridder does just enough to stay busy in the clinch. He does, shots to the body without any great power on them, but they add up. These shots add up. It must have been frustrating, and it clearly drained Whittaker's gas tank because these are not huge body shots. These are probably 20-30% power shots to the body, but he was staying busy in each and every round. I mean, if you look at that final round, de Ridder had 2 minutes 15 control time. He controlled the fight the round for the large part in the clinch. He landed 73 strikes, of which 9 were significant. And that just kind of tells you about the kind of strikes that were being landed by Reinier de Ridder. I'm going to quickly look at the UFC rankings because I'm filming this a day later than I usually would. I'm going to see how those rankings have changed. I mean, I can't imagine that the rankings have actually changed this week because you've got Reinier de Ridder going down a spot and Robert Whittaker still ranked ahead of him. So I don't think the rankings have been done this week, but I think Reinier de Ridder with that win jumps into the top 5. With that being said, you've got fights to sell. You've got Imavov versus Carvalho coming up. You've got Jared Cannonier and MVP coming up. So you've got fights to sell where these guys need a number next to their name. So whether Carvalho will jump above Robert Whittaker so you can pitch the Paris main event as 2 top 5ers with Bahara and Imavov going at it. But in my opinion, Reinier de Ridder jumped straight into the top 5 of the division. And it's an exciting... Middleweight is a very exciting division at the moment. You've got the number 1 guy in Dricus du Plessis, the champion, defending his bout in 2 weeks against the number 3 guy, Khamzat Chimaev. You've got the number 1 ranked fighter in the division facing number 6. You just had number 5 drop down all the way to face number 13 and lose. You've still got Sean Strickland in there. You got Jared Cannonier versus MVP. MVP could be new blood to the division. To progress up higher in the division, I should say. You've got Paulo Costa back in the winning column. You've got Brendan Allen back in the winning column. You've got a fight in a few weeks between Roman Delodzi and Anthony Hernandez as the main event. I think it's an Apex card, which is a bit of a shame. And of course, you've still got Israel Adesanya knocking about that kind of top 4, top 5. So middleweight is a really, really good division at the moment. Now, I haven't read too much into what Sean Strickland is up to outside of the octagon. I know that he is... I understand that he is suspended at the moment, and I think it's for the attack on the fighter in the cage after his corner... Well, Sean Strickland was cornering, he attacked someone, and I think he's suspended for that. But if he's not, I want to see Reinier de Ridder versus Sean Strickland next. And that'll push Reinier de Ridder to see, is he that kind of championship level? Because I believe Strickland's last fight, I just want to double check it before I commit. I believe Strickland's last fight was, they lost to Dricus at the beginning of in February of this year. He's 2-1 since getting the belt off Adesanya. That one coming against Paulo Costa. I think that'd be a really, really good fight, a really solid fight. For Whittaker, I think he has to take a long look in the mirror and consider if he has still got that desire to fight in the UFC or fight at all. He's done it all. He's achieved everything he's needed to achieve. He's headlined pay-per-views. He's headlined fight night cards. He's held the interim title. He's held the undisputed title. He's tried to get the undisputed title back, and I think the division has now moved beyond him. If we look at the rankings, Robert Whittaker has got a loss to Dricus du Plessis, a loss to Khamzat Chimaev, a loss to Israel Adesanya, 2 losses to Israel Adesanya. Now he's got a loss to Reinier de Ridder. It's a long way back to the title for Bobby Knuckles. And for me, the body language in there on Saturday night was a little bit worrying. He appeared that he no longer has the ability to go 5 hard rounds. Now, granted, he's coming off a tough loss to Khamzat Chimaev. We still talk about those walls with Yoel Romero, but if that Robert Whittaker, the Yoel Romero version of Robert Whittaker, was in there on Saturday night, I think he'd run through Reinier de Ridder. It wasn't. He's aged. He's got a lot more miles on the clock, as it were, and I just think that he hasn't really got the ability anymore to go 5 hard rounds at championship pace with the killers in the middleweight division. Yes, it was a grueling fight. He was defending takedowns constantly from Reinier de Ridder. However, we've come to expect Robert Whittaker to be able to do that, and if he can't do that, has he got a well-rounded enough skill set to be able to defeat these guys early on in the fights? I don't think so anymore. So for me, I don't want to. I never want to retire a fighter. But for me, I think Robert Whittaker looks to maybe have one more left in him. Take him back to his home. Take him back home, as it were, in a winnable fight, just like they did with Dustin. Probably not a pay-per-view because he's not as big a pay-per-view star as Dustin. But take him back, fight night, main event, 5 rounds, and let him retire in his home country, because I don't think Robert Whittaker has what it takes to be at the elite level anymore. And it's tough to say that, because I like Robert Whittaker. I've always liked the way that he fights. Someone that has proven that they are championship level is none other than Petr Yan. Petr Yan put in a great performance. He had nothing to gain and all to lose in this fight against Marcus McGee on Saturday night in what turned out to be the co-main event. Obviously, we expected it to be Aaron Pico versus Movsar Evloev. We now know that Pico is booked in I don't know if it's a 5-round main event, co-main event, against Lerone Murphy. Is that at UFC 318? Let me just double check, because I believe that it is. And that is 319 co-main event. At the moment, I don't think that'll be 5 rounds. I assume because of the short notice. Yeah, 3 5s according to Tapology. Even so, great fight. Lerone Murphy versus Aaron Pico. I'll go on to talk about that obviously when I break that card down next week. But back to Petr Yan versus Marcus McGee. Good showing for McGee, really good showing. He had everything to gain, nothing to lose. Whereas with Yan, he had everything to lose and nothing to gain, really. But Yan did prove that at this point in time, there are levels to this game. In my opinion, he just out-moved, outworked, and just out-MMA'd McGee. He was quicker than him on the feet. He was better than him on the ground. You know, Marcus McGee also, in my opinion, needs to learn how to take a shot a little bit better, because there was big tells when he had got landed on heavy. But this is all stuff with coming. I think he's got, 4 or 5 UFC fights maybe. This will all come with experience. Yes, he's older, but people now know the name Marcus McGee. He's put in a much better showing than a lot of people did against Petr Yan. But for me, Petr Yan is next for the title shot if Merab wins. If Corey Sandhagen wins their upcoming fight, he might need to face someone else before competing again for the title, because Merab probably deserves an immediate rematch, but it all depends how that fight goes. It's a very difficult situation if you're called Petr Yan. But Yan, I don't think this fight did any harm for him. He went out there, he stayed busy. He competed in March of last year against Song Yadong. He then competed he took a year off after losing to Merab and getting taken down 11 times. Granted, his takedown defense was actually very good in that fight. Merab shot for 49 takedowns, and Yan was only taken down 11 times. He then returned against Song Yadong, won a unanimous decision, then won across 5 rounds against Everson Figueiredo. That was in November of last year. If he were to have just sat out, he could be sat out for a year and a half. He wanted to stay active, he wanted to stay busy. He fought Marcus McGee, and I think, that was McGee's 5th UFC fight. I think it was a really big risk for Petr Yan, but I think it was really good for him as well to get out there, get another fight under his belt. And like I said, it all depends now on Merab versus Corey Sandhagen as to what Petr Yan does next. How that fight plays out massively determines the career of Petr Yan. If Corey Sandhagen does pull off the upset, I would not have any qualms about seeing Petr Yan versus Umar Nurmagomedov or Petr Yan versus Sean O'Malley too. With that being said, I understand that Umar has got a fight booked, 5-round main event. We're not sure against who yet, but that is supposedly booked or at least in the works. So who knows? For Marcus McGee, I don't think his stock dropped at all after the weekend. Yes, he lost the fight. It's his first UFC loss, but realistically, was he expected to win? No, I think from the stats, I think he was a massive underdog heading into the fight, and rightfully so. Petr Yan is a former champion of this division. He's a younger guy. He's the more experienced guy. He's the heavier hitter. Marcus McGee. It was a kind of a bit of a lose-lose situation. A win-win situation for McGee, because if he would have won, obviously it would have put him in the sort of top 5 of the division. Now that he's lost, because he wasn't absolutely blown out of the water, and it was a competitive fight, it went the full 15 minutes. People now will recognise Marcus McGee. The name Marcus McGee will, people will know who Marcus McGee is now. So it's really good for Marcus McGee, in my opinion. So rest of the card, some of the highlights from the card. Shower Bullet looks good. Got back in the win column. I say he looked good. Physically, he looked dreadful because his nose was shattered. It was broken. It was all over the place. But MMA fighting wise, he did very well, in my opinion. Glad to see him getting back in the win column. But my one gripe with Shower Bullet is that he will have to get better, and he will have to improve, and he'll have to do it very quickly, because the UFC is pushing Shower Bullet. They are. There's no denying it. They are pushing him. If he's going to mix it with the best at 185 pounds, he's going to have to improve, and improve very quickly, because there were times where it looked like Marc-Andre Barrios could have, if he had a little bit more skill and a little bit more left in the tank, he could have really, put the button down a little bit and gone for Shower Bullet, and maybe got him out of there. It wasn't to be, however, but questions do need to be asked about Shower Bullet. He needs to improve, and he needs to improve a lot quicker. The UFC want to push him, but there are people in this division who could expose him. I think if the UFC is sensible, they will give him favourable matchups. And what I want next from Shower Bullet is a fight against Paulo Costa. I think that would be a fantastic fight. Shower Bullet now is what? 1, 2, 3. He's 5-1 in the UFC. I think a fight against Paulo Costa would be extremely entertaining. Stick it in the main event. See if he's got that 5-round cardio. That's what I want to see next. Almabayev versus Okocha was really fun. It was high paced. It was well-rounded. There were great scrambles. For me, Almabayev versus Kai Kara France next. I think that would be a really good fight. Again, Ochoa taking the fight on short notice does absolutely no disservice to him. There was times he was just out-wrestled, essentially. He was out-wrestled. He was largely controlled on the floor. He took it on short notice. He did really well. He landed hard on Almabayev as and when he could. But again, I don't think his stock goes down at all. Someone whose stock rises again, and it seems to rise quite often, sort of under the radar, as it were, was Bogdan Guskov. A horrifically good knockout of Nikita Krylov, which is a shame, because I do like Krylov. I do like the way that he fights. He will lose 3 on the bounce. He will win 4 on the bounce. He will lose 2 on the bounce. But whatever happens, he puts on entertaining fights. He's now been KO'd in his last 2 fights, though, by Dominic Reyes and Guskov. So it might be time just to step back a little bit, take a little bit of time out, then look to go again for Krylov. Bryce Mitchell looked fine at bantamweight. It was a fine performance. It was okay. He was obviously badly hurt in that first round, and he was just out-wrestled Said Nurmagomedov, which is not something you expect from Said, to be honest. Yeah, that's all I really have to say on Bryce Mitchell. He should potentially be ranked now. Said was, I think, on the cusp of being ranked, but in my opinion, yeah, it was the performance from Bryce Mitchell was fine. That's all I really have to say about Bryce Mitchell. It was, it wasn't a standout, and it wasn't terrible. It was a fine performance. It was nothing to get too excited about. It was nothing to say, well, he's cooked at the weight. Stick him in with someone ranked next, maybe a Marcus McGee fight. That could be fun. Both of them fought on the same card. None of them really took too much damage in their fights, so perhaps book that one next. That could be a potential. Muslim Salikov got one of the most obvious KOs against Carlos Leao that we'll see in a long time, but it was great. Leao just walks forward and tries to pressure opponents. Muslim Salikov fights amazingly off the back foot. The KO was almost inevitable. Great finish. Davy Grant versus Damon Blackshear. That was fun. It was high paced. There was a lot going on in that fight. But dangerous Davy Grant got the win. Tabitha Ricci, I think, was quite unlucky not to get a performance of the night bonus. She did quite well to sort of stave off Amanda Hebas at the beginning of the fight. But she's nasty. That elbow straight to the eye, to sort of orbital. Amanda Hebas, from what I understand, now either has had or needs surgery on her face. Vicious knockout. And to be honest, if you're Tabitha Ricci, you bounce back from the loss against Yan Xiaonan last time out. She's a difficult one, Tabitha Ricci, because she's a win a couple, lose a couple, win a couple, lose a couple kind of fighter. It's nice to see her get back in the win column. She is still young. She's 29. So she's still got, a lot of growing. I think that's probably it for Amanda Hebas in the UFC. She started a UFC career with a lot of hype. She was 4-0 in the UFC. She beat Mackenzie Dern. She beat Paige Van Zandt, by finish in the first round. But since then, she lost to Marina Rodriguez. She beat Jandiroba. She lost to Caitlin. At the time, it would have been Caitlin Chikagi, and she beat Vivian Araújo. She lost to Macy Barber. She won against Luana Pinheiro. And then since then, she's lost to Rose Namajunas in the main event. She lost to Mackenzie Dern in the main event. Now she's lost by finish to Tabitha Ricci. It's probably time for Amanda Hebas to wave goodbye to the UFC, but it is what it is. And we got a record broken by Stephen Nguyen, who knocked down Yaha 6 times in their fight that lasted 10 minutes, averaging, a horrific knockdown ratio per minute. You're talking about a minute and a half, just under per knockdown. What was Jason Herzog doing? I have no idea, but sometimes Jason Herzog gonna Jason Herzog. This weekend's UFC card. Strap in, because I've got a bone to pick with this weekend's UFC card. It was going to be Tatsuro. I can't say it. I'm just going to call him Tatsuro. Tatsuro versus Amir Albazi. Amir Albazi again withdraws from a fight. This is beginning to get a little concerning. He's 17-2. He lost his last one against Brandon Moreno, but his pull-out rate of fights is worrying, to say the least. Just looking on Tapology now. Now, granted, not all of these are his fault. However, since joining the UFC, since his first UFC fight in July of 2020, he's had 8 cancelled fights. Like I said, not all of them are his fault. He was supposed to fight Brandon Royval. Royval broke his wrist. But the last 2 pullouts that he's had a neck injury. That's his fault. And we don't know why he pulled out of this fight against Tatsuro. It's a bit worrying if you're Amir Albazi, because you've got a lot of potential, and yet because of the constant pullouts, you're probably not living up to that potential. But he has been replaced with Hyung Sung Park, 10-0. I think 3-0 in the UFC. He came through on the road to the UFC. 3-0 in the UFC. All finishes. Definitely impressive. We're supposed to fight Steve Erceg. Is that UFC? Oh no, for the fight night after this weekend's fight night. It's okay to cancel cards, in my opinion, or distribute the fights that are on this card to different cards, because the main event in itself, even before the pullout, was not a strong enough main event to hold up this entire card. You've got some good fights on this card. This is, if I'm not mistaken, an Apex. It's an Apex card. You're not losing. The fans aren't losing out. But this is the UFC. They just keep chugging on, keep chugging on, keep chugging on. This, in my opinion, is one of the weakest UFC cards in history ever. I'll go from the bottom up. You've got John Yanis versus Austin Bashi. Me neither. John Yanis making his UFC debut. Bashi is 0-1 in the UFC. Then you've got Piera Rodriguez versus Caitlin Souza. Piera Rodriguez 3-2 in the UFC. Caitlin Souza 2-2 in the UFC. You've got, I'll just try and pick out a few highlights. You've got Trezor Gore 2-3 in the UFC. He's got a 5-3 record. Yes, he's the Ultimate Fighter winner, but no, I don't even think is he the Ultimate Fighter winner? I can't remember if he won or came second. I don't watch the Ultimate Fighter. I think it's dreadful. But facing Rodolfo Vieira, who himself 5-3 in the UFC. You've got Nathan Fletcher 1-1 in the UFC versus Ryan Nakamura 3-1 in the UFC. Nick Klein 0-1 in the UFC versus Andrei Pilav 0-1 in the UFC. On the main card, you've got Neil Magny versus Zaleski. Sorry, that's a fun fight, but both guys are, veterans to say the least. You've got Nora Cornell versus Cal Rosa. You got Evs Brenner versus Esteban Ribovics, which should be a good fight. That is a good fight. I'll give them that. That is a fun fight. But Brenner is, I'm just looking now, he's 3-2 in the UFC, with both of his losses coming in his last two fights. Esteban Ribovics put on a really good fight with the Calvin Gastelum lookalike Nasrat Haqparast last time out, but did lose a split decision. He's a fun fighter to watch, so that will definitely be one to tune in for. As are the two men in the co-main event. Chris Duncan 4-1 in the UFC, coming off a big win against Jordan Vanucic last time out. He's got 2 guillotines in as many wins. He faces Mateusz Rebicki. Forgive me if I've pronounced that wrong. Who himself, he's 4-1 in the UFC. Finished some, got finished in some. It's a good co-main event, but I've got questions to ask about the main event. I think it's a fun main event. You've got Tatsuro Taria coming. I've got questions. Do we need this main event? I'll be honest. I usually watch every single fight on a UFC card. I will not be watching every single fight on this UFC card. I think it's poor. I think it's, if you're talking pay-per-views on the whole, are A-star cards. You've then got your A's, your B's, your C's, your D. I think this is a D-level card. I think if I never know the results of any of the fights on this card, it doesn't change anything for the UFC. It really does not change a single thing for the UFC. And that, in my opinion, is damning. Now, you look ahead to next weekend's card. You've got Roman Dolidze versus Anthony Hernandez. That potentially has title repercussions. Hernandez is 8-2 in the UFC. He's got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. He's on a 7-fight winning streak. A lot of them coming via finish. Roman Dolidze, I think it's a rematch, I believe, or it was booked once before. Yeah, it was booked for 2014. the 2024, sorry, and Hernandez had to pull out. That has got top 5 repercussions. Eric Anders versus Christian Leroy Duncan. Can Christian Leroy Duncan really take that step into the kind of upper echelons of the middleweight division? And Eric Anders is that kind of, I don't want to call him a gatekeeper, but unfortunately that's what he is. Steve Erceg, can he bounce back? You know, he got the title shot after a knockout, let's be honest. But since then, has lost 3 straight. He lost the title shot, lost against Kai France, lost against Brandon Moreno. There's questions and there's potential that he can progress on from that. You've got Urso Medic never in a boring fight against Gilbert Urbina. You've got Miles Johns in there. You've got a couple of other good fighters in there. I mean, Gabrielle Fernandez is a fun fighter. I believe that she's the one that got the finish of Kong Wang last time out. That is a far better card. Why can't we amalgamate these 2 cards, both of them taking place in the Apex a mere week apart, and just make good fights? Because that main event is probably going to be a really good fight, but I for one don't care about it. It's a shame because the UFC is guilty of this. We'll just carry on plodding on through, can't cancel a card. And granted, at short notice you probably can't cancel a card, but when you've got a late notice main event between Park and Tatsuro, I've got to ask questions. Is this the elite of the UFC? You know, some of these people have more main events than, you know, some people who are potentially... Khamzat Chimaev, from my understanding, just off the top of my head, has never main evented a card. Khamzat Chimaev. He's got a title shot in a couple of weeks. Has never main evented in the UFC. I just want to double check that because I don't want to have gotten that wrong, but I'm pretty confident that he has never... He was set to main event, wasn't he, against Nate Diaz, and obviously had the debacle at UFC 279. Didn't main event that. He has never main evented a UFC card. He's 14-0 and he's fighting for the title. Questions have got to be asked. Like I said, leave a message in the comments. Leave a comment below. Do you think the UFC are putting or trying to put on too many cards? I'll leave you with that. I will break down this weekend's card because I'm going to watch bits of it, but I'll be honest, I'll cherry pick it. I'll watch a little bit of this fight. I'll watch a little bit of this fight. I'll watch the highlights of these fights. I'll look through the stats, and I might have some of them on in the background, and then I'll look ahead to a decent fight night card in Hernandez versus Delidze. Like I said, leave a comment down below what you think about what I've just said. Thanks for listening, guys, and I will catch you next week.